Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call the February 28th, 2023 meeting of REMSCO to order. First item on the agenda is a roll call vote.
Please respond when your name is called. Doug Jacob,
Present.
Grace Cacciola,
Present.
John Nevins, Andrew Dahl.
Present.
William Goffin, Dominic Fattinelli. Daniel Mizels,
Present.
Robert Bristol. Present. John Johnstone. Travis Kessel. James Downey. Gerald Gelbart.
Present.
David Mekitansky. Joseph Schenker.
I'm here.
Michael Raiola.
Present.
Michael Batch. Mordecai Lax.
Here.
Martina Barcarella. Vincent Franco. Nancy Benedetto. Present. Arthur Cooper. Robert Krupe.
Present.
Megan Kessel.
Here.
Manfred Fuchs. Sean Graves. Jerry Gumbo. Yadidja Langsom.
Present.
Brian Levinsky.
Present.
Dennis Laurie.
Present.
Mitchell Powell.
Present.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the January 24th minutes, which were distributed prior to this meeting. Are there any, rather long, are there any corrections, omissions, discussion? Hearing none, the motion to approve is in order. Motion. Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone disagree? Any abstentions? Please mark them being unanimous. Thank you.
Right, who seconded the motion? Okay, myself, okay, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the correspondence report. Okay. From Findlay EMS, Medical Special Operations Conference will be held on May 4th and 7th, 2023. Register at fdnypro.org/MSOC. New York State DOH. There was a job posting. There's a job available for a health system specialist 1 in the New York area. The link, if you're interested in the job, we will send it to you. New York State 2003 evidence-based EMS agent agenda for the future white paper. Okay, this was a rather large 70-page document, which I was one of the authors of, and it's read at REMSCO about half an hour. And yeah, and there was some discussion. And they see this as the future, and you should read it because there are some things in there that you may or may not like. So it was distributed. It's worth reading. A lot of work went into this. It wasn't done by the Bureau of EMS, so there's some quality behind it.
And we start.
And we start.
All righty.
Yeah. Okay. There's a new form for ambulance transfusion services available at the Wadsworth website. Very long link. It'll be in the minutes. You can also Google it and apply. There is a letter advising Dr. Krupe that he has completed his second term as of December 31st, 2022. 2 candidate nominations will be emailed. Makes no sense in English. Who's doing the mailing to whom?
We are going to do a mailing to Valerie.
That's
Once you
not what
let me
it
know.
says, but okay.
2 candidates will be emailed to Valerie Huggs.
Who's writing this?
We are writing it, and I will speak to you after the meeting.
Okay, in any event, that's what's happening. New York State DOH State Trauma Advisory Committee meeting scheduled for March 1st in Troy, New York. Vital Signs will be held in Syracuse, New York, October 19th and 22nd. The Bureau of EMS is requesting presenters. If you have anything you'd like to say or give a speech, there is a link online. Again, you can Google it and we'll send that around.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have people from New York.
Well, I did call up and say that New York City would definitely like to present because we want to present something on our mental health team. And I was directed to the website. So, yeah, I'm really excited.
Okay, Bureau of EMS agency leadership and EMS provider briefings, you know, they have these on a monthly basis. Get online, you Zoom, and they do a lot of talking. There's a whole series of dates they scheduled up for the year. Let's put that in the minutes, so anyone who wants to kill an hour and New York State Department of Health EMS requests the EMS for Children survey be completed. If you haven't yet done it, please do so. Have your agency do that. There's a link for that as well. The January 2020 EMS for Children Advisory Committee was held on WebEx on January 31st, 2023 at 1 p.m.
And everything you see in here was sent ahead of time to all members.
Good. There's a whole bunch of policies and advisories that are now available on the DOH BMS. We mean the REMSCO foiled a request to Bureau of EMS to find out what the rules are for expansion of co-sponsored territories. Okay. They basically gave us an excuse to be busy to do this for right now. And the new estimate date for receipt is March 24th, and it is the 5th delay in responding to this. So they must be very, very busy.
Oh, yes.
First, they got to find their lawyers before they can answer. New York State DOH enforcements. Okay, Joseph Kuhn, Rocky Point, New York, EMT 357561, had New York State's EMT certification suspended for 1 year, effective 1/23/23, for violations of various parts there. The suspension is stayed pending no further violations for 3 years. Must successfully complete a paramedic re-education course at the direction of the agency medical director. Assessed a civil penalty of $1,000. The enforcement actions, both providers and agencies, can be viewed online, and they were very happy to tell us they're now back in business and they are busy enforcing. So we'll see them running around. Okay, no new information from the MSH. Course sponsors. A new application for BLS course sponsors has been received from NYU Langone. New York State DOH has received the application and it appears complete. The REMSCO is seeking support for the application. Now you notice the state told us that we have nothing to do with certifications, but the state wants us to give support. So figure that one out. And anyway, I think we should have a little discussion right now on whether or not we should give support to the NYU opening up a certification agency. Anyone have anything they want to say?
Mitch Powell was here. If you have any questions, you can answer.
This is a training, is that what?
This would be a original EMT sponsorship.
I just want to ask, is this part of the course funded? Are EMTs going to pay for the course, or is it funded, or it's a community?
So NYU was given a grant from the Dazo family to fund an EMT program for the first 10 years, free of charge to anybody that wants to take the program, including tuition, books, equipment, everything's paid for.
Wow,
That's great.
that's very nice.
Charlie, can you hear? Are we picking up the voices?
I think it's speaking a little louder.
Yeah, that's why I wanted you to mention that, because it's a big
Right.
deal to get 10 years worth of free EMT
I also
training.
brought along Danielle Mulder, who's going to be the course administrator, and Danielle was our CIC.
We know Mel well.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah,
Yes.
so this is just more of a formality question. Again, we haven't had one of these come up in a long time, but from my recollection, this type of thing was moved to a committee several years back. Yeah, when training and ed used to deal with it, and then it was moved to QA. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I'm just saying that remain consistent. QA was the last committee to.
Yeah, I do recall that is true. We haven't had all these for a long time.
Yeah.
But then again, since the state said that we have nothing to say about this anyway, just, this is just one of whether we supported it. And I would accept the motion from someone that REMSCO write a letter of support. And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of having the staff write such a letter of support? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? We've marked it as being unanimous. Next. The Staten Island Emergency Training Center petitioned the New York State DOH Bureau of EMS to approve a change of officers due to the retirement of Officer Willard Wright. Should say something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Next time we have a EMS, we should
yeah, Willie Wright's been teaching for,
forever.
40 years, at least.
At least. An email was sent to Ryan Greenberg of the New York State DOH Bureau of EMS, following up the initial unresolved request. The initial request was made on July 7th, 2022. In the past, New York State DOH has approved transfer of course spots training centers to new owners, but now states this is not possible. REMSCO is asked to support the transfer of this active training center to a new owner. Maintaining training centers during a time of need for EMS education is unquestionably a priority. Additional training centers are all legal business entities, and there should not be any barriers to transfer from one owner to another. Is there any discussion?
I am completely confused as to what authority the State Department of Health has over private businesses.
Let's
That's
have a
what this-
motion. How many of us are completely confused? The DOH thinks they're doing.
It is, this is a private business. It's a business. They don't have control over that.
Yes.
From the REMSCO admin side, has anyone reviewed the Article 30 or DOH policies that would preclude, prevent anything of a transfer of ownership without change in,
There is
Isn't it?
There's
nothing.
nothing
There's
in
nothing.
Article 30 about it.
so
This is called making up the rules as you go along.
Let me ask you a question. In the past, it's gone to them for approval? And they've
now
said
you
yes.
just got to notify them of a change of,
Is it, my question is, you're making an assumption here. Is it going to them for approval or is it just a notification of the past?
Well, I have to tell you, this is the first time we are actually being brought into this process, because before we were just presented with, we just transferred New York Methodist paramedic program to Allied Health. It's
Sure.
done, period. We don't need your input, we don't want your input. And now, and this wasn't the first one. I mean, it's been done before. I know,
In the
At
past,
least
when it's
two
been
of-
done.
it's just been done by the Department of Health.
Notification,
Yes, just.
or is
notification.
it that they have to approve it? Does anybody know the answer to that?
I think it's just been approval. I mean, we wouldn't know because we weren't allowed to have any part in it.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the question, right? If it's
Well, the
the
DOH
past,
says
it's different.
this may not be possible based on what
If the signs, that's very.
Yeah.
Right, so the idea here simply is we will entertain a motion from the floor that we support this transfer.
So
We have any seconds? Is there any discussion? Yes,
Why don't we ask whether it's possible before we say no?
Dr. Cooper. Dr. Cooper, how
Yes,
many things
Professor.
have we asked Ryan Greenberg and his minions for explanations of why things may or may not be possible? And we said, the lawyers have said so, or the lawyers must discuss it, or other such black hole type of responses.
Well. Professor,
I have no time for this.
You have no time for this? Well, I think you should make time for it. I think that it's a matter before we shoot ourselves in the foot and write a letter and get slapped, as so often happens. Why don't we just ask a simple question? What is the matter with it?
I think that, this doesn't happen very often, but I agree with Art that I think that just blanketly saying we support something. We're currently arguing with the Bureau of EMS that we need a REMSCO, we need a REMAC, because our region needs the operational oversight to be local because of the needs of this region. And others in the state are doing the same. But if we don't understand just to say we're gonna write a blanket letter when we don't understand what the problem is with that, with their decision, I think takes away from our ability to say that we're needed.
Marie, do you have any idea of what is behind Ryan Greenberg's response that it may not be possible?
I have not read anything in Article 30 or Part 8 on the boundary.
So I don't know any of that answer, but Article 30 does state that the regional council has the authority to recommend training centers. Therefore, based on that, I would support, it doesn't say anything, that's what our authority is, to recommend to the state.
And
So
I
we
imagine
can-
your motion is that we
We
recommend
recommend
to
to
the
the
state.
state, because that is under Article 30, that does give us that authority.
Could I just add to that? And as another point, I think that we should follow up with a request for why, where is it in law that says that this can't happen, but make it separate and apart? Only because I don't want them to use this to stall the transfer. Because that's what they would do.
They just asked us to support a new.
Yeah.
Training center, right? So I would think that it's even less of an issue to support an existing one.
Any further discussion? The motion on the floor reads. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, that staff write a letter to the DOH supporting the transfer, and a second letter asking for an explanation on why we're being asked to do this. Is that correct?
Yeah, but what the barriers are, what are the barriers that they foresee? I think we ought to add that in. Yeah.
But if we can't answer the second question, how are we supposed to answer the first question? In terms of support?
That is actually a very good point. Unless what we're saying, we don't care what you tell us, we can support, which I think what I'm hearing from at least some people. No. I
We
understand.
don't have barriers. The barriers are being created by the state on their side. We still have the statutory authority to make recommendations.
We can recommend.
Yeah, we could recommend it. They could tell us, no, you can't recommend because. And then maybe we'll get an answer.
Maybe. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Say aye.
The motion to recommend, restate, please.
Restate the motion. The motion is, Nancy, please listen carefully, make sure I said it correctly.
Sure.
That we write a letter of support for the transfer and ask for any reasons that may bar the transfer.
Yeah, let's make sure we use the word recommend, because
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
out of
Yes,
Article 30.
let's recommend. Who seconded this motion? Do you agree with the motion as it's been?
I agree.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? This mark is big unanimous. Okay, we received various CFR EMT and paramedic course renewal applications from Fidney EMS, Code One Inc., Emergency Care Programs, Universal Emergency Care, Centers for Allied Health Education, Kingsborough Community College, and Emergency Care Programs. All applications appear complete for documentation purposes. Requires a REMSCO recommendation to approve, so therefore we need a motion now to approve all those, that entire list of applicants. Who made the motion? Second? Do any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Okay. Following training, CME training events were received and distributed. Traffic incident management. There's a link will be sent. The SIEMT, 10-round EMT CVO for train the trainer. Saturday, January 28th, it's already occurred. Well, it's already occurred, so what's the point? Okay, I'm not going to read the ones that already happened. There was an update for the National 911 program. This will include a 911 data path pilot project. Okay, the webinar is on March 14th at 12 p.m. And the National 911 program has released the National 911 Annual Report 2021 data. There's a long link for that as well. It'll be distributed. The Office of the Council sent out the following: agendas, minutes, and associated attachments. Distributed the following: New York City REMAC advisories, 2023-01 REMAC LMS, 2023-02 New York City REMAC paramedic recredentialing via REMSCO LMS. An objection letter for revision to Article 30 of the New York State Public Health Law as presented in Part S of the 2024 Governor budget was emailed to the New York State Assembly, the New York State Senate, and the New York City Council. We're going to discuss this document a little bit later. Okay, the entire document can be found. A link will be presented. New York State Senate Bill S4020 is also can be read online. And a comparison of Article 30 Part S was sent to everybody, which you should have received. And it is big. Excellent job. New York State congestion plan update. We'll talk about that in a moment in the ambulance committee report. And a Zoll Heart of a Hero registration flyer. Zoll will be providing seminars in capnography, 12-lead mechanical ventilation, and more. We held on 2 days, March 1st, 2023 here, and March 2nd, 2003 at Kingsborough Community College. CME credit will be awarded, and EMS providers can register on the LMS.
We have about 30 people registered for each day.
Okay. Are there any further questions about the correspondence report? Next thing on the agenda is the report from the ambulance committee. Where is my report? In a second, 20 pieces of paper here.
Oh, the meeting just happened.
I know. Okay, so the ambulance committee met immediately before this meeting at 5 o'clock. It was chaired by me. Nothing of great importance was raised. Okay, there were no applications for transfer of operating authority, no application for termination of public need. The tag simply reported that we had already approved buying the new ambulance stickers, waiting for the board of directors to approve the money. There was no unfinished business, and there was no new business. I stand corrected. There was one piece of new business, which was the congestion plan. And it was decided that a tag was going to be formed, which will come back at the next meeting of REMSCO with a 1-paragraph letter that we can write on all of our behalf to the city council.
Is it city council or is it state?
State
The governor's initiative.
to the state.
Yeah.
Okay. That concludes the ambulance report. Training and Education Committee report.
So training and ed met on. Training and ed met on. When did we meet? February 10th. We've been meeting in between also. During that time, we reviewed the numbers. I'll provide you with updated numbers of what's going on with the update and whatnot at the moment. We discussed taking the courses from the old LMS and updating them or discarding ones that no longer apply to migrate them into the new LMS. There's a team working on that. As previously reported, I think at REMSCO and at REMAC, we identified already through this update that there's a serious weakness on the regional stroke protocol. So we have a group that's also working on the old stroke training that was initially put out there when the stroke protocol first rolled out, and updating it to the current protocols to try and fill the gap for the new providers, which is where we believe the issue is. And so that agencies can avail themselves of it and just send people there, and they'll have one consistent trainings too. One of the biggest things that we found in the survey from those who took the updates was that as much as they liked this asynchronous version, or they could do it on their own time and it was quick and brief and whatnot, because they didn't have an opportunity to ask questions. So we held a town hall question and answer session that was hosted by Dr. Schenker and Dr. Barbara this past Friday, which was incredibly well attended and went very, very well. There were over 200 people on there. I have to thank the REMSCO staff actually for jumping in last second to enable us to actually run something that big, because I think Zoom capped us out at 100 and kind of like last minute, the system flooded with additional people. So that went really well. We identified a whole lot of need for additional training, especially in the behavioral health area. Look forward to that. In terms of use of the LMS, there are currently 9,600 total registered users on the LMS. 5,200 of those are since the launch. In terms of the update itself, about 6,000 BLS providers, 2,600 ALS providers have completed it. In terms of events, you heard about some of them. Some of these have been on the LMS, some not. About 16 total events have been registered on the LMS. Some were privately held by agencies, some were open to the public, some by REMSCO. About 1,000 registrants total. Of those 1,000 registrants, 800 medics. So that's really good. People are availing themselves of it. In terms of the refresher pathway for medics, 2,600 medics are signed up for the refresher pathway. About 35 or so have completed a majority of what they needed to upload for their CME refresher. And about 20 have actually refreshed already through the system. So that's pretty good. It's coming along. There are still some submissions that are erroneous, or like there are EMTs that are submitting. I think there's some people clicking on the wrong things and it's leading them down, the wrong rabbit hole. In terms of CME records submitted, close to 1,700 CME records have been uploaded into the system by providers. Of those, about 1,300 have already been processed by their training coordinator. So it's being used well. There have been some glitches. We're aware of them. We've been discussing this with the LMS vendor. Joe's been instrumental in working with them. We continue to work with them lately on a daily basis. Today, I think we overloaded them, being that it was the last day before the update was due, and kind of went down for a little bit. But there are a bunch of changes that we requested to make things flow smoother and to kind of follow our goals for how we want refresher to run here in the region. So just to make it a little less glitching on some areas, make it easier for the training coordinators as well, so a little more hands-on. Basically, if these numbers, this data set is useful, I'll continue to just use this format for the numbers, and I can just, I'll put into the correspondence for you to.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate
Are there any more questions? Having participated in both the events personally, kudos are due to you and your team. This was you and the team of people who presented it. It was done exceedingly well, exceedingly professionally done, and it's opened a new era in the way we do things here. You're to be commended for that in the record.
There's definitely a need, and I'm happy that people are availing themselves of the opportunity, so we'll continue to host those.
I just wanted to definitely thank the Training and Ed Committee. This was gargantuan task, and Joe and Georgette and, you know, whoever else on my staff that worked on this. I know that they've been on responding to emails and phone calls for the past 3 weeks at least. And teaching people how to use this. Joe has run courses to train the training coordinators at each agency. So this, if we can take credit for anything, this is a really big deal. And the state has actually asked us to let them know what improvements we've made to the system. And that's another thing. Thank you to the state. I don't say too many nice things about them, but them giving us access to the LMS has really been a game changer for education in New York City. Yeah. Well, now it's- it was my idea, but-
I think someone should make a motion commending the NE committee and all who put this together.
Absolutely.
We have a motion, Dr. Cooper, a second. Discussion on the motion. All in favor?
Will certainly relate to the next meeting is Friday.
The next, what's the report on?
That was enough.
I think that. The next item on the agenda, Dr. Sheckler, REMAC report.
So REMAC met on January 10th, in the last REMAC meeting. The February meeting was canceled. And during the January 10th meeting, we had a discussion about the LMS, which you've heard about already, so I'm not gonna discuss that again. And then there is a need for the QA committee, QA/QI is seeking members. This is something that we have a few people that we're looking for, but we still need Joe, we need a nurse, I believe.
Yeah, we still have to fill the RNs.
Okay, so we're looking for an RN. It has to be a member of either REMSCO or REMAC. So if anybody knows of somebody who's interested or.
Is everybody looking at?
These meetings are virtual, right?
No, again, they will be virtual.
Meetings are virtual.
You know, there's a couple of people that we're looking at, but anybody that can help, it would be appreciated. The next meeting is gonna be, well, February 14th was canceled. I believe the next meeting is March 21st. But I'm not 100% sure that date.
The next meeting is tomorrow.
No, you're talking about
No,
QA.
He's talking about REMAC. The next QA meeting is tomorrow. Yeah. Any questions? All right.
Thank you very much. The next thing on the agenda is the State EMS Council. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Quality Improvement Committee report. That's you. Yes.
All right, so the QA committee last met on February 1st. Unfortunately, since we do have the still vacant seats, we did not have an official quorum. So we did have some interesting discussions. We're still working very closely with First Watch to update the regional dashboards. Dr. Lai, Dr. Redletter, and myself have met a couple of times with the First Watch group to refine some of the measurements that are going out there and kind of updating some of the just the parameters for how they're pulling data. So that's ongoing. Well, Dr. Redletter is going to be presenting at QA tomorrow some of that information. We're still doing follow-up on our Stroke at STEMI QA project. We'll be reaching out to agencies in the coming months
just to kind of do a follow-up survey on some things that you've implemented since we did the study, on the various measures that we're improving some of the QA and STEMI care that we're giving. So our next study that we're looking at is going to be into sedation and intubation, since REMAC passed that under standing orders a couple of years ago. So we're currently gathering data on how often sedation, intubation is occurring throughout the city. So we're gathering data on that, and the committee is going to be revising a study based off of that data to see how that protocol change has affected the region. Obviously, Dr. Schenker spoke on our needs to recruit. We're looking at the New York State quality measures. The state's rolling that out along with a new program on called biospatial. So we're reaching out to the state for them to provide a demonstration of that program to the QA committee to see how we can implement that and leverage that for some of our work. We did receive a application for an appeal for a regional restriction, and the next QA meeting is tomorrow, March 1st.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Please, everyone who's a member of the committee, please show up so we have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is the State EMS Council report. Dr. Ruby.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the state EMS council, and I have to say it was my own experience, okay, it was a pretty disturbing meeting. I think some of you may be disturbed, okay, at least those of you been there, okay, or heard about it. So I'm gonna try to give you a brief synopsis of it, okay, and I'll let others, comment, okay, who also were there, but basically Ryan Greenberg, the director of your EMS, okay, announced that there was a proposal to the governor's budget. What's concerning is that this proposal was even submitted, okay, without prior discussion, okay, input, okay, from REMSCO, okay, and others. And this seems to be a habit, okay, how we do business, okay, at the state level these days. More troubling is that the proposal itself includes significant changes to Article 30. Okay, and these changes in many ways, okay, have the potential for undermining and bypassing, okay, the REMACs, okay, and REMSCOs, okay, and really, can really potentially alter the lines of authority, okay, and accountability, okay, in our entire EMS system in New York State. Now, you would think, okay, that something involving something at that level, okay, of importance, okay, at that order, okay, would involve some degree of transparency discussion. Okay, and that's the troubling aspect of putting us through a budget process. Okay, my opinion, okay, or at least the appearance, okay, is that this was done by budgetary means, by design. Okay, so that there would not be discussion. Okay, there would be no transparency. Okay, and somehow maybe perhaps get away with people just endorsing it without maybe even taking a serious look at it and challenging it. So, I mean, some of the issues that are raised, one proposal is to create EMS districts, 10 districts in New York. How that would work is not clear. Who they would be accountable to, what the line of authority would be is not clear. There could be several REMSCOs, regions assigned to a particular district. And these regions may be very different. I don't know who would be on these district boards or how they would be appointed. Or how knowledgeable they would be, especially if they're dealing with more than one district, a region that may be very different from one another. It's just all very, very amorphous. It's constructed in a way, this proposal. So just approve this and just trust us. To fill in the blanks. And write the rules and regulations. We'll interpret what this really means. You don't have to concern yourself with that. Well, we're really concerned about it. And there's some other aspects of this too. There's a proposal taking the REMSCOs out of the CON process. I mean, who knows need better than the REMSCOs, because they know their communities, they know where the deficits are. And I think we do a pretty good job of addressing them. Also, I think we're highly efficient at doing this. I mean, once a student application in, regulatory wise, we have 90 days to complete the process. The state takes 2 years to respond to an appeal. But we should believe the state is more efficient, okay, than the REMSCOs. Okay, so we should give them the CON process. I mean, the whole thing is really pretty absurd. Okay, in addition, there's a number of ambiguous language, okay, which again is like, trust us. Okay, we can't tell you what this really means. Okay, but we'll interpret it for you. Okay, and we'll write the regulations. Okay, and you'll be okay with living with that. Okay, so this is like totally unacceptable. Okay, it's not a matter of going back and fixing, in my mind, fixing the details, what's in proposal. This should never go into a budgetary process. Okay, this should be part of a legislative process with full transparency, okay, where the REMSCOs across the state and other people who have interest in EMS, okay, can express their opinions and offer suggestions, okay, before it gets presented, okay, for a vote, okay, by a legislature. So you know, to this end, Marie did a very nice job, with a very nice letter. Okay, some other people, a number of people, you know, provided some input into it. Is going to already went out, okay, to the New York State Senate Assembly and the members of the City Council, okay, with an addendum, okay, which includes our objections to what's in this proposal. I hope that covers it.
Question for I think most of us who have looked at this proposal are familiar with, you know, the details. Obviously, no one is familiar with, you know, the plans behind those, you know, those proposals. But you know, for those of us who were unable to attend state council, I think that's most of us in the room. Can you give us a little bit of a sense of the tenor of the meeting, you know, the sense of the council, other than simple outrage?
Yeah, no, but the tenor of the meeting, I let others give their opinions. I didn't want to, give this impression of what I saw, gave that maybe others saw the same thing. But my impression was everyone felt kind of blindsided by it. They didn't know until they showed up there that this was going to be put out there. They really weren't ready on that basis to really speak to what was in the proposal. Okay, and there were some people, unfortunately, I have to say, there was less pushback than we expected. Okay, putting something like this for a budgetary process. Again, one
Less
member said,
pushback than expected, you said?
I think something of this nature, this magnitude. Okay, I would have expected more more discussion, okay, about
A few people said,
for a budgetary
well, this is
process.
your chance. If you take it out now, you're never gonna get it.
Right,
You might as well
right.
do it
It's
now.
like take it or leave it, you don't get
As
it.
if that's an excuse to put something bad forth, because if you don't do it the way it is now, you're never gonna have another opportunity to do it. That was expected. And I have to say, Dr. Cooper was extremely eloquent. Do you think he was eloquent today on the floor of REMSCO? Very eloquent
Dr. Cooper
in
is always-
stating. I mean,
Dr. Groupie is always.
yes, but in expressing the objections, among other things that I heard buzzed by my ear was the regions and the REMAC shouldn't be certifying paramedics. That's the state's job. You have no business doing that. That's illegal.
That's illegal.
That's illegal. That was a phrase that was used.
Even though it's in part 800.
Yeah.
It's illegal.
There's a lot of things.
Dr. Cooper, you understand my
I do.
my sense of what is going on.
I don't not share that sense.
I understand. You did
Being
speak that.
quiet, but you know, I spoke about this, I think, at our REMAC meeting
You did.
fairly strongly. And I still feel the same way.
Yeah, we need, and if you haven't yet read this massive comparison document, and if you're in REMSCO, you really should get a sense of what is happening here. If I look at the amount of things that are yellowed and crossed out,
Sure.
you can see that there's lots of issues. And I understand that it went today already to the
Today, after I was told that it's another thing that's really irritating. We're all part of the EMS community. And none of us were told until after 5 o'clock today that the state, well, I don't know if it's the health committee or whichever committee that's dealing with this in Albany, had their meeting today.
Well, there
There is a hearing
Hearing.
on the health aspects
Mhm.
of the governor's budget.
Ah,
So each section of the governor's budget gets their own time. So today was health.
Yeah,
And
and
yes,
we
we
really
were-
should have been told, that's one of the jobs, I think, it's part of the state EMS
Sure.
bureau. They should be telling us this.
And to reiterate Dr. Krupi's point, and yes, he was very vocal on behalf of the region, and I'd like to say that whomever is our representatives from the region or partakes in representing the region needs to be on the same page so we can have a united front. We can't have different thought processes being brought up because then it looks disjointed at the meeting. Couple of other key points is if this goes through, CMAC appointments is from the Bureau.
Yeah.
Not from the region. So we could be told, you, thank you, you're done.
That's it.
There's also regulation development language that, if enacted, gives them authority, but there's also another conflicting process part of Article 30 that gives REMSCO the authority to regulate along with the Bureau. So if you do a really deep dive, and those of us that did, there's a lot of language in there that's conflicting. There's a lot of language, if you read it carefully, transfers the authority into the Bureau without collaboration of the REMSCOs, the SEMSCOs, and the stakeholders. And to quote Dr. Krupi, the SEMSCO sustainability report that was just read prior to this discussion talked about reimaging or reimagining EMS. But if this goes through in Part S, it's going to be done without anyone at the table making that decision. So during the 3 days, Part S was trying to be sold, for lack of another word, to all the stakeholders at the table. And in reading it, it really, if you look at it, it's all these great little projects, things, and changes that we all would love to have. But if you look at how it's going to be enacted, where there is language, it's very raw in how it's going to be administered, or it's going to be administered by the Bureau. So basically, it was sold on all these great things, but it's really going to be a unraveling. And I kind of sat from a different section of the room, and there's an unraveling that can go on in EMS. We're very fragile. It just came out of COVID. And all these niceties are being thrown in front of people, but they haven't really read it. And if you really read it, it'll unravel the future of EMS. And only the people that, how you call it, are on board, will have any say. And that just can't be. There has to be collaboration from all aspects, and we all have to be on the same page.
This is also the second time that the Bureau of EMS sent the proposal to the state, and only after the fact asked us to endorse it, if you remember last summer.
Yeah,
Okay, so this seems to be a pattern
Last
that's
year-
emerging, which is another cause for concern.
last year when they came out with Part F in the governor's budget, we and other regions basically killed it. So the state did turn it over to the subcommittee, legislative committee.
And systems.
And I was on that committee, though I objected to the premise that anything should go into the governor's budget. It should be a transparent. But I sat on the committee, we made changes that moved the concentration of power back from the Bureau to the SEMSCO and the REMSCOs. When I did the review, I did a side-by-side then of Part F and Part S. And not all of our changes were accepted. They were just reverted back to, as Jerry said, the little landmines throughout the document that many people didn't look at. They didn't do that kind of a review. And it's unfortunate how disingenuous the department has been on this. It's just not a way to run EMS on a state level. And this is just a continuation of what they've been doing with education. We have basically been booted out of education. The regions have nothing to do with selecting regional faculty. They don't want us to do CIC courses anymore. They've turned that over to NAMS, and I guess that's not so bad. They're tolerating us right now with CLI courses and the instructor updates. But they don't even want specialty course sponsors anymore. It's another way to get regional councils out of the education business. They're just not wanted.
So the status now is that the officers of the council made this very detailed marked up copy. A letter was sent to all of our representatives. And now we've done what we have to do, I guess. Maybe we should also start talking to congressmen individually.
Well, yeah, that's actually what we need to do. I plan on making phone calls. I'm hoping that people seated around this table, if you don't want to make the phone call personally, but you have a contact, let me know. We will make the call for you. Thank you, Art.
Okay, I think the point was made earlier that it's vital that we all be speaking with one voice. The legislature never acts on anything of this type without pretty much everybody in agreement that this is the direction we need to take. And there are some mega issues, like, in effect, the whole citizenry on which, they sometimes break form and take an up and down vote as to how people actually feel. But in general, these types of issues, never make it to the final version of the budget or never make it to the floor, even in the substantive stuff later in the year, unless there's pretty strong unanimity across all sectors. That's part one. Part two is to understand that the folks that are pushing these changes, and I don't know who that might be. Clearly, it's the department is behind it on some level because it's in the governor's budget. But where in the department the force for change is coming from, okay, I don't know. It may well be that the director of the bureau is being told to do this by others above him. I have no clue. I don't know. I don't know where the direction is coming from. But one thing is clear that we need to, as a region that represents all of New York City, we need to speak with one voice. That means we're going to have to hold a couple of meetings, okay, among those who are going to be meeting with our electeds. And the key issues that really has to be taken on in the next couple of weeks is a meeting with Gustavo Rivera, the Senate Health Chair, and a meeting with Amy Paulin, the new Senate Assembly Chair, or excuse me, Assembly Health Chair. Now, Ms. Paulin is from Westchester County. She's not from the city. Unfortunately, as many of us are aware and saddened by, Dick Gottfried retired. Dick was a very strong supporter of EMS, particularly local control of EMS. And we've lost him as the Assembly Health Chair. That said, we still have to meet with Amy Paulin and let her know of our strong feelings that this is not the direction that we should be taking. Last, I would argue that as we have always done in the past, all the major changes in EMS, okay, have been accomplished through the creation of an ad hoc Article 30 coalition. When the big changes took place back in 1992, Dick Gottfried was kind enough to sponsor that coalition out of his office. Tom Riley, who many of you may remember, was deeply involved with the fire chiefs for many years out of Nassau County, chaired an Article 30 coalition in the late 90s, okay, which made an enormous amount of progress, but for reasons belongs only to the powers that be, the changes that they recommended never saw the light of day. But to me, I think that the approach that needs to be taken now aside from individual meetings with individual legislators, and I can tell you that the most powerful way to do that is for individual ambulance agencies, okay, individual EMS agencies, volunteer, proprietary, municipal, hospital-based. The agencies themselves are going to need to write letters, which in effect, parallel the comments that have been made in the outstanding document that Maria and her colleagues put together. And trust me, the number of letters from the agencies, letters from individuals are, particularly if they're individuals, who are well known to the folks, particularly, for example, if you know your own senator, you know your own legislator in your area, your assembly person in your area, that's tremendous. Okay, you need to speak with your representative and let him or her know how you feel about it. But letters from individual, ambulance services, first response services, et cetera, all the agencies in our region. And on the fire department side, ideally, not only Fidney and the city, but also, local 2507, right? We need to weigh in on this. All the powers that we have. Now, do remember, New York City represents 40% of the population of the state. So roughly speaking, our representatives, control 40% of the votes, and it takes two houses, right? So that would be the approach that I would be taking. I'd be arguing that every single ambulance, first, that we meet as soon as possible with chairpersons Rivera of the Senate Health Committee and Paulin of the Assembly Health Committee, with a select group, half a dozen, no more, okay, of the representatives from REMAC and REMSCO combined, that we put on a full court press to make sure that all the ambulance services are represented. And third, that we call for the creation of an Article 3 coalition to discuss these changes so that we can all come together as a unified body. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying that it's just the stakeholders themselves. Okay, all the Article 30 coalitions in the past have always included representatives in the department, who are afforded, by the way, a lion's share of the voice, right? Okay, they are afforded by our elected officials with a great deal of responsibility and authority over the conduct of EMS in the state, and they have an important role to play. But the stakeholders have an equally important, if not greater, role to play, because remember, healthcare is never delivered out of an office in Albany. It's always delivered by you. Okay, all right. It's always delivered by you, and the conditions on the ground. The conditions in your locality. So what you think and what okay, and what you have seen, okay, vitally important to our legislators. Okay, stories, okay, are always what convince our legislators that something is good. As an example, I mean, I'm just picking something off the top of my head here, but this outstanding town hall thing that we just had, that's a regional initiative. It's not a state initiative. This is something that we put together, and there are numerous things that this region has put together over the years. The LMS is amazing. The response to COVID-19, amazing. The relationship we developed with City Health to do so much work to protect the citizens in this region. Amazing. That can't be accomplished at the state level, okay? For the precisely the reasons that Chair Langston mentioned, right? The bureaucracy just moves too slowly. We're much more nimble. We can respond to local conditions, and we can respond in a hell of a hurry. We've even got an executive committee that can move motions through both REMSCO and REMAC in a heartbeat if the need should arise, and we have done that in the past when there are emergency conditions that need to be addressed. So that's my strong recommendation. Marie asked me before the meeting what I thought. I came here, didn't want to come here tonight. I've got plenty of work to do back at the hospital.
But I asked them, please.
But she asked me definitely, please be here tonight, but that's my 2 cents. Maybe it's more like 5 cents, but still.
Perhaps if
All great suggestions.
would be a good idea for Marie to write a letter to every agency, as you
Absolutely.
mentioned, with a synopsis of what's going on, and it would even a form letter a letter that they
That's what I was
review
gonna ask you.
to send
It's
to
like
their
a template.
representative and put in the urgency of doing it, not in a week
Right.
or two, but
Now.
now.
Now, yes.
That should be probably something
And
the office
encourage
should be
people,
doing.
encourage
number
people
one.
to use it as a guide, but to
Right.
use their own language. Okay,
Yeah.
legislators do, when letters come in that exactly are copying a template, they pay attention. But they pay a lot more attention to, to when there's.
And some
individual
issues, actually, they actually weigh the volume.
They
of letters
actually
they
do.
get.
You did, he is
Yeah.
right. You did, as a matter of fact, he designed the scale. No. No, but he's absolutely right. But that's the way we accomplish. But make no mistake, guys and gals, okay? All right? The last big change to Article 30 came in 1992, okay? It's 30 years ago. Yep. Okay, it's 30 years ago, okay? A lot has changed in the last 30 years. It's high time that we look at the system. It's high time that there are some proposals that the health department has put forward, that may be appropriate, may be helpful, may help the system. Now, as an example, when Maria and I have had this discussion before, okay, I don't know a thing about what these EMS districts are going to work on. But we all know that funding and sustainability are huge issues, in many parts of the state that don't happen to have, a city government that can fund, a huge EMS system, or communities like we have here in New York City that are relatively wealthy compared to those little towns upstate that can, that can afford to, that it can afford even to have voluntary adult services, not to mention the hospitals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Okay, so it may be that in other parts of the state, having an EMS district that has taxing authority, like the fire districts have, could be something that's really good. Okay, but without knowing the details, and we all know the devil is in the details, without knowing the details, okay, of how it's going to be organized, what role they're going to play, what responsibilities they're going to have, whether or not they're going to have taxing authority. That's so the fire districts basically blend their taxes into the local property taxes. Nobody even knows they're there. Okay, nobody even knows that they're paying, the taxes that have been established by a set of local fire commissioners in a fire district. I mean, to buy the latest and greatest, biggest, fire truck that'll reach the 10th story when there's no more than 2 stories in any building in the town, right? Okay, trust me, this stuff happens. Okay, you all know it. Okay, you've been there. But again, it could be a good thing. It could be a good thing, but without the details, okay, without knowing the details, we cannot possibly support it. And that's what having an Article 30 coalition will help accomplish. Okay, it will get all these issues on the table, and the stakeholders can say, well, what if we did establish EMS districts? They did have taxing authority. They did correspond in terms of their boundaries to the regions, and the regional councils, and REMACs had a role in setting priorities, for how that money would be spent. This could prove to be an incredible boon to EMS. So I'm not saying any of this is what's behind the thought process here. I don't know. Okay, none of us really knows where in the department this is coming from. Okay, it's not just Director Greenberg wants to do this and and so on and so forth. We don't know. Okay. But we all do know how bureaucrats function. That we do know. We know that they like to be in control. Okay, all right, and they know that that stakeholders can sometimes present them with with moments of embarrassment. Okay, which no one likes. Okay, so our goal needs to be to work with. Okay, to insist that we work with, but that they in turn work with us. Okay. So, we're all about making sure that we have the best for our patients, right? Okay. They are too. They want the best for our patients. We want the best for our patients. They know some stuff. We know some stuff. We know different stuff, but it takes a village to raise a child, right? All right. And it takes a whole system to save a single patient. So there we are. I'll get off my soapbox, but that's what we need to do. I urge that we do it properly.
Just to set up the meeting. We was discussing.
Yeah, no, I'm going to start working on contacting Rivera and
Colin,
Amy. Yeah, I did send letters. I sent letters to both of them
Well,
individually.
no, I'm sure you did, but probably not requesting specifically a meeting, right?
No,
Right.
no.
We have
But
to,
I'm gonna make phone calls.
we have to call, we have to send a letter specifically requesting a meeting with the assembly person and the senator himself or herself. Okay, because of the great import of this issue, making sure that they understand that it directly affects the health and welfare of their constituents. Okay, nothing's more important, as we all know, than the emergency health needs of our elected representatives' constituents. That's what we do. That's the ace in the hole for us. We know how to do this job. Okay, and we want to work with, the state to make sure that we can all do this collectively in the best way possible. That's the tone we need to be taking.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, to tag on to Dr. Cooper. Quite ironically, the director of the Bureau sat in on a meeting of a group of sectors that sit at SEMSCO. There's the volunteer EMS sector, the commercial sector, the various firefighter sectors that sit at SEMSCO. And it was discussed collaboration, coordination, and one voice. So ironically, prior to SEMSCO, we've been meeting collectively to discuss things, one of which obviously is what's going on now. Although we each individually have our own needs, everyone kind of starting to get a consensus that this process is not working. So from what I recommend, and I said it to tag on to Dr. Krupe, is all the parties that represent REMSCO at CMAC and SEMSCO and the subcommittees need to meet regularly before these meetings and discuss which ways we're going to handle certain topics, so we're all on the same page. And since there's a REMSCO or regional program agency subcommittee now, that's another avenue that you could push forward. So everyone at the regional program agency levels are all in collaboration, and then getting higher, the others will start to fall in. NYSVARA put their position paper in, which you saw also, which does align with REMSCO. And I haven't seen onions yet, but there's a lot of discussion that we've had back and forth. Everyone is really on the same page. It's a matter of the language that their officers have to put in to protect their certain initiatives. But to be clear, Part S is only Article 30 stuff. We actually went through every single nook and cranny. It doesn't involve any funding initiatives that were already asked for or put in the budget. The funding that comes with Part S is in Sam. Yes, it was there, but it's nothing that's going to affect how we do business. If it goes away, it doesn't affect the program agencies. In fact, if it was done right, it probably would have given more money to the program agencies, but it's really going to the ZMS district concept, which is
The
kind
district
of
money,
convoluted, because if we're not doing the right enough work correctly, it would just require hiring staff and funding to do more initiatives, and everything probably would have worked out a lot easier.
from what we were told when, I have to say, when we were in Albany at SEMSCO, the fire department, myself, and even the EMS union, we talked together, and we all in agreement and supporting each other at the SEMSCO and with the Bureau staff. What we were told, not very clearly, but that these districts, if they were put into law, the funding either could go to municipality, but much more likely this money would be for the Bureau. Because these districts and their district's chiefs would report directly to the Bureau of EMS. So that money is not for us.
Okay,
Understand that if an Article 30 coalition does come to pass, understand that this is gonna require probably close to a dozen meetings, okay, in relatively short succession. And it's in some central location. And people are, people have to commit to going to those meetings. They have to be there every single time.
Yes.
Okay, it's a tough slog, okay? But at the same time, we're talking about, we're not talking about now, we're not talking about ourselves. We're talking about planning for the next 20, 30 years, okay? As I said just a few moments ago, whether this goes through or not, this is gonna make a sea change. This would make a sea change in EMS, but a sea change is potentially needed. Okay, it's been 30 years. We need to relook at the system. We're all aware of the sustainability issues. Sustainability document is provided with a very nice, springboard, for issues that need to be considered. Okay, and I think it's a great time. It's a wonderful opportunity for us, but let's put our shoulders to the grindstone, grind with whatever it is, and not just work to oppose part S in the budget process, okay, but to commit to working with everybody in the state to doing a system, potential redesign that that would serve the needs of the citizens for the next generation.
Okay, we discussed this. If you haven't get a chance to read the document, why don't you go ahead and read it so you know exactly what we're talking about. Marie has a plan of action.
Yeah, and actually, the letter that we sent out says exactly what you say. Our recommendation is that we need to have an EMS consortium of statewide EMS experts representing all stakeholders. I mean, that's
Whatever you call
I don't want to forget, this is a Senate bill. There's also an Assembly bill. I don't have the number, 4020. And it's brought forward by Mayor and Chief Prasad and Strufus. Prasad is one of our New York State senators from Queens. And I don't know if anyone here from Queens that recognizes this name. Because in this rewrite of Article 30, some of it is great. I love the idea that they want to make general ambulance services be recognized as essential services. I personally think that's a great thing. But there are other things in here, which of course they stuck in the establishment of special districts. So it's like somebody got to them and had them stick that in there. So this is another piece of legislation that I'm trying to, and I hope everybody else is going to try to write to these people. But Prasad is in Queens, so he's.
Marie, about half a dozen years ago, the National EMS Advisory Council commissioned a special paper on EMS as an essential service. I had the honor of serving on that panel for during that period of time. And there's a lot more to being declared an essential service that meets the eye. We all know that it's essential, but it, because of the services that it provides. But it has a great deal of, of legal and financial implication.
Yeah.
To become an essential service. And I'll share this document with Marie so she can share it with the council. So everybody's really aware of what is entailed in becoming an essential service in the United States of America. Recognize this.
Yeah, I mean, what I thought it was is that if you're an essential service, then there has to be some kind of funding, whether it's tax-based or whatever, that might answer some of the problems that these poorer areas have. That makes sense rather than, districts that we don't know how they work. But I mean, this is another document that people who really probably don't really know enough to be making these changes shouldn't be. It should be also part of the EMS consortium, Article 30.
Okay. Any further discussion? Is there any unfinished business that I'm not aware of?
All of this.
All of it's not finished.
All of this.
Is there any new business? Yes.
Just want to make the announcement, EMS week season is officially starting. So we are proud to announce that we will once again be holding our EMS week awards and recognition ceremony Monday, May 22nd. So your providers We have some providers that did extraordinary work this year. The application process is open on our website. Applications are due by mid-April. So that your providers have a chance to be nominated for an award. As always, the recipients of our regional awards get sent up to the state as nominees from the region for the state awards. So also opening up, tomorrow will be our application for the Dr. Pittsy Paramedic Scholarship, which we always award at the EMS Week ceremony as well, to help some key deserving EMT providers, offset some of their financial costs for promoting up from EMT to paramedic. And as always, we always could use your support in sponsoring the event, so we have another great event for our providers.
Thank
Give
you.
us your money.
Is there any other new business? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn is in order. So moved. Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you for making the effort to come.